Emotional scenes. Triple H and Roman Reigns attend Hulk Hogan's memorial service. You won't believe the raw emotion on display as WWE legends pay tribute to Hulk Hogan. Triple H and Roman Reigns lead an unforgettable memorial service that left the wrestling world in tears. In this heartfelt video, we take you inside the emotional scenes from Hulk Hogan's memorial service, a solemn event that brought the wrestling family together. Watch as Triple H, Roman Reigns, and other WWE icons share tearful memories, pay tribute to the Immortal One, and celebrate the life of a true wrestling legend. Under a gray Florida sky, the world of professional wrestling paused, just for a moment. Time itself seemed to freeze as a sea of black-suited figures walked slowly through the gates of a quiet memorial venue just outside Tampa Bay. No bright lights. No pyrotechnics. No roaring fans. Only silence. And sorrow. What was once a world of leg drops, what you gonna do, brother? Catchphrases and Hulkamania chants had now transformed into something painfully human. On this day, the spectacle was gone. And what remained was a community in mourning. The news had struck the wrestling world like a thunderclap. Hulk Hogan, the Immortal One, the real American, the man who body-slammed Andre the Giant and body-slammed his way into the hearts of millions, was gone. After decades of defying the odds, bouncing back from surgeries, scandals, and storylines, the unthinkable had finally happened. Hogan had passed away. And now, at his memorial service, the legends he once stood beside came forward, not to entertain, but to remember. Triple H stood near the front of the venue. No championship belt. No leather jacket. No scripted speech. Just Paul Levesque, the man, the friend, the brother in arms. His eyes, red-rimmed but steady, scanned the room filled with so many familiar faces, all etched with the same heartbreak. For Triple H, this wasn't just about honoring a fellow legend. This was about honoring a man who had shaped the very foundation he now oversees. A few rows back, Roman Reigns sat in silence. No tribal chief swagger. No bloodline entourage. Just Joe and no I, paying his respects to someone who helped pave the road he now walks as the face of WWE. Dressed in a tailored black suit with his long hair tied back, Roman stared forward, his hands clasped tightly, jaw locked in solemn reverence. Not even he could hold back the tear that traced its way down his cheek as Hogan's iconic red and yellow bandana was placed gently beside a massive arrangement of red roses. The air inside the memorial was thick with emotion. It wasn't a spectacle. It was sacred. Quiet. You could feel the weight of decades pressing down on the room. Ric Flair, visibly aged by grief, stood in silence beside a massive photograph of Hogan hoisting the WWF Championship above his head at WrestleMania 3. His lips moved in whispered words, too soft to hear, too personal to share. For these men, who had performed larger-than-life personas for millions, today wasn't about gimmicks or glory. It was about legacy. The memorial began with a slow procession of tributes. Vince McMahon, long since retired but present in the front row, kept his head down. The man who had built the empire alongside Hogan, who had shared both profit and controversy, now sat in rare vulnerability. Stephanie McMahon held his hand. Shane McMahon blinked back tears as video clips of Hulk's most iconic moments played on a large screen, his entrance music faintly echoing in the background. Now a funeral march instead of an anthem. Then came the speakers. First, Triple H stepped up to the podium. He took a deep breath. The room waited. It wasn't just silence, it was suspense, grief, and respect all rolled into one painful moment. "I don't know how to begin this," he finally said, voice slightly trembling. "Because how do you say goodbye to someone who never seemed mortal to begin with?" He paused. A choked-up cough. A glance at Hogan's family seated just to the left, his daughter Brooke, his son Nick, both struggling to maintain composure. Triple H continued, "I was a kid when I watched him. Then I became his colleague. And eventually, I had the honor of calling him a friend. You didn't just watch Hogan wrestle, you felt it. He didn't just wrestle matches, he wrestled moments. He taught us how to believe in something larger than ourselves." The crowd of mourners nodded. Some wept openly. Others gripped their seats, knuckles white. Roman Reigns followed. Slowly making his way to the podium, the entire room held its breath. Not because of the character he plays, but because of the truth he was about to speak. "When I was a kid, I wanted to be Hulk Hogan," Roman admitted, voice low but clear. He was bigger than life. He was the reason so many of us stepped into the ring. But what I didn't expect was how real he was outside of it. He went on, describing a time when Hogan had taken the time to pull him aside after a match early in his career. He told me, "You've got it, brother. You've got the fire." And when someone like that says something like that, you carry it forever. His voice cracked as he concluded. Hogan was a warrior, a showman, and a brother. But most of all, he was love. Love for the fans. Love for his peers. Love for this business. And that's what we'll carry forward. As Roman stepped away from the podium, the crowd rose in a slow, thunderous standing ovation. Not the kind of ovation you hear at an arena, but one born from respect, loss, and tribute. The sound filled the air like a symphony of remembrance. What followed was an emotional procession of videos and messages from WWE superstars who couldn't attend in person. John Cena's pre-recorded tribute played next. "He was the reason I believed," Cena said, his eyes heavy with grief. "He passed the torch to so many of us, but none of us could ever really fill his shoes." Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a movement. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, filming abroad, sent in a somber voice message describing Hogan as the ultimate trailblazer, saying, "The first time I met him, he greeted me with a 'Whatcha gonna do, Rock?' And I knew that was his way of saying welcome to the family." And now we say goodbye to a legend who never stopped believing in us, even when we doubted ourselves. Throughout the service, a large digital board played loops of Hogan's greatest moments, his victory over Andre the Giant, his iconic WrestleMania promos, his triumphant return in the early 2000s. Fans around the world were invited to tune in via live stream, and thousands of comments poured in from every corner of the globe. Emojis of broken hearts, prayers, and yellow and red hearts flowed nonstop. Hulkamania was trending again, but this time as a eulogy to the man who gave it life. One of the most gut-wrenching moments came when Brooke Hogan stepped forward. Struggling to maintain composure, she addressed the room filled with wrestlers, legends, executives, and close friends. "My dad was your hero," she said softly. "But to me, he was just Dad. The guy who made pancakes on Sunday mornings. The guy who played guitar off-key. The guy who was always gone but always made sure I knew I was loved." She paused, tears flowing freely now. "He was so proud of all of you," she continued, scanning the room. "Every wrestler here today, he watched you. He rooted for you. Even when he wasn't in the spotlight anymore. He lived for this. He lived for you." The crowd, usually so stoic and strong, was undone. Even tough-as-nails legends like The Undertaker, sitting in the third row, had to look away as tears welled up. His signature hat rested in his lap as a sign of solemn respect. In a symbolic tribute, the service concluded with Hogan's signature theme, "Real American," playing softly in the background. Slowly, one by one, wrestlers rose and made their way to the front of the room where a massive photo of Hogan stood tall, surrounded by his boots, his bandana, and his championship belts. Each person laid a single red rose before it. Triple H went first. Then Roman Reigns. Then Cena. Then Randy Orton, Becky Lynch, and even Vince McMahon, who struggled to rise but insisted on placing his rose himself. By the time the last rose was laid, the entire stage was a sea of red, symbolizing passion, blood, legacy, and love. As people slowly began to exit the venue, the silence returned. There was no small talk, no camera flashes, just quiet hugs, nods, and handshakes. The kind of gestures that say more than words ever could. Outside, the Florida air felt heavier. The storm clouds above never rained, but the sky felt like it wanted to cry too. Fans had gathered along the edges of the cemetery with signs like, "Thank you, Hulk," and "You'll always be our hero." Some wore Hulkamania shirts. Others wore black. All were silent. As Roman Reigns walked toward his car, a young boy ran up to him. Clutching a small action figure of Hogan, the boy looked up and whispered, "He was the best." Roman bent down, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, and simply said, "He still is." Behind him, Triple H lingered. He stood at the edge of the parking lot, eyes locked on the venue door, as if waiting for one last glimpse. Then he looked up at the sky and quietly said, "Rest easy, brother." And with that, the wrestling world closed a chapter it never wanted to end. The following days after the memorial were no easier. In fact, for many in the wrestling community, the reality of Hogan's absence didn't fully settle in until they returned to their usual routines, Raw tapings, travel schedules, media appearances, and found that someone was missing. There was no thunderous brother echoing down the hallway. No oversized shadow of red and yellow cutting across the locker room. The man who once filled every room with charisma and conviction was gone, and what remained was a void that even the biggest superstars couldn't fill. At WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, a temporary memorial was set up in the lobby, a quiet corner featuring Hogan's boots, his iconic feathered boa, and the classic winged eagle WWF title belt. Staff members, from top executives to new hires, stopped by to pay respects. Some left handwritten notes. Others simply stood in silence. A few younger staffers who had never met Hogan found themselves tearing up, not from personal loss, but from witnessing how deeply the man had impacted those around them. Triple H, now head of creative and talent relations, called a meeting with WWE producers and writers. It wasn't business as usual. The tone was quiet, almost sacred. "We're not just dealing with a storyline," he told the room. "We're dealing with a legacy. One that needs to be honored right, not just with a tribute video, but with heart." The following episode of Raw opened not with fireworks, not with a promo, but with silence. The arena dimmed. A single spotlight shone down on a podium placed in the center of the ring. The Titantron lit up with images of Hogan's most unforgettable moments. His entrance at WrestleMania, the slam heard around the world against Andre, his red and yellow confetti celebration with the crowd roaring behind him. The audience, tens of thousands strong, stood motionless. As Real American played softly in the background, Roman Reigns walked to the ring, not as a character, but as himself. The tribal chief was gone. The vest was gone. What stood in the ring was a man, visibly mourning. "I know we usually start Raw with a fight," Roman began, pausing to swallow the lump in his throat. "But tonight, we start with remembrance." He looked out over the crowd. There would be no me without him. Backstage, producers watched the segment unfold in near total silence. Even the usually chaotic control room had fallen still. No one dared interrupt a tribute this raw, this real. Roman wasn't reading a script. He was speaking from a place deeper than kayfabe, deeper than storylines. From Seoul, later that evening, WWE aired a full-length tribute special titled Hulk Hogan, Forever Immortal. Narrated by legends like Jim Ross, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and even Bret the Hitman Hart, once Hogan's on-screen rival, the program offered a tapestry of memories, rivalries, and moments that defined a generation. From his days in the AWA to his pop culture appearances in movies like Suburban Commando, the special reminded fans not just of Hulk Hogan the wrestler, but of Hulk Hogan the icon. Meanwhile, outside of WWE, the ripples of Hogan's passing extended far and wide. AEW held a 10-bell salute before their flagship show. Wrestlers like Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Cody Rhodes wore red and yellow armbands in silent tribute. Promotions across Japan, Mexico, and the UK issued statements of mourning, calling Hogan a symbol of global wrestling and the bridge between territories and mainstream. Social media, of course, exploded with tributes. From fans who had watched him body slam giants to millennials who had only heard stories of Hulkamania from their parents, everyone had something to say. One post that went viral read, "He wasn't just my childhood. He was my hope." When Hogan won, it felt like we could win too. As these tributes poured in, Hogan's family began organizing a more permanent legacy. With WWE's support, They announced plans to convert Hogan's childhood home in Augusta, Georgia, into a memorial museum. The announcement came with an emotional video of Brooke Hogan walking through the old home, recalling stories of her father lifting weights in the garage and rehearsing promos in the mirror. Even back then, she said, voice cracking, he was preparing to inspire the world. Back in Tampa, a massive tribute mural began to take shape. Painted by a local artist who had once met Hogan at a charity event, the mural depicted Hulk in full gear, arms flexed to the heavens, surrounded by storm clouds parting into rays of light. The artist explained the symbolism in a local news interview. He was larger than life. He was the storm. But he was also the sun after it. TripleH and Roman Reigns both attended the mural unveiling. Roman gave a short speech, his voice steady but eyes glistening. Every time we pass this wall, every time we see that smile, that pose, we'll remember that greatness isn't just about winning titles. It's about how you make people feel. Hogan made us all feel like heroes. TripleH followed with a rare glimpse into their personal relationship. He once told me, "Don't ever get too big to high-five a kid." That was Hogan. Always for the fans. Always for the people. He gave us everything, and now we carry it forward. As the mural was revealed to the public, a massive crowd gathered to cheer, not mourn, but celebrate. Chants of "Hogan! Hogan!" broke out, raw and real. Some fans wore replicas of his t-shirts. Others lifted their children onto their shoulders, explaining who he was, what he meant. It was clear that Hulk Hogan didn't just belong to the past, he belonged to the future too. WWE announced the establishment of the Hulk Hogan Foundation, a nonprofit that would support young, aspiring wrestlers who couldn't afford training or travel. The foundation would also partner with children's hospitals and military veterans organizations, two causes Hogan had long championed. At the press conference announcing the launch, Roman Reigns served as the keynote speaker, while TripleH pledged an initial $1 million in funding from WWE. Hogan didn't just build wrestling, Roman said. He built dreams. This foundation makes sure those dreams don't die with him, they keep growing. Behind the scenes, the loss hit people in ways they didn't expect. Commentators like Corey Graves and Michael Cole admitted that calling matches now felt different. He was always watching, Graves said. "I'd get a text after Raw, nice line, brother." Now, the silence is deafening. Even new generation stars like Austin Theory and Carmelo Hayes took to social media to reflect. "We never shared a locker room," Hayes tweeted, "but I stand on the path he cleared." Thank you, legend. The next major WWE pay-per-view opened with a tribute unlike any before. Not just a graphic. Not just a video. But a full-scale dedication. The ring ropes were wrapped in red and yellow. The stage was lit in Hogan's signature colors. Every announcer wore a Hulkamania pin. Fans in the audience were given special edition armbands with the words, "Say your prayers, eat your vitamins, believe in yourself." TripleH stood at the entrance ramp, flanked by Roman Reigns, John Cena, Becky Lynch, and a host of other WWE superstars, past and present. As the bell tolled 10 times, tears weren't just falling in the arena. They were falling across the world. Because for every fan, every performer, and every person who ever believed in the power of professional wrestling, Hulk Hogan wasn't just a man. He was a memory. A myth. A movement. And while the man himself may now rest, Hulkamania lives on. In the weeks that followed the memorial and televised tributes, something extraordinary began to happen across the wrestling world. From independent promotions to the global stage of WWE, wrestlers young and old began incorporating subtle nods to Hulk Hogan in their routines. A signature leg drop here. A cupped ear to the crowd there. Even superstars who had never shared the ring with Hogan began carrying pieces of his legacy forward. Because it wasn't just about honoring a legend, it was about honoring what he stood for. In the locker rooms, the conversations changed. Stories that had never been told before suddenly emerged, tales of Hogan giving advice to rookies behind the curtain, quietly paying for someone's medical bills, or calling a young talent after a tough loss. What fans saw on TV was only a fraction of who Hulk Hogan was. Behind the larger-than-life persona was a man who had given decades of his life to making others feel strong, feel hopeful, feel seen. Triple H recounted one such moment during a backstage interview following SmackDown. "We were in Detroit," he said. "It was 2002. I'd just torn my quad the year before. I was doubting myself, wondering if I still had it. And Hogan, he just walked up, slapped my back and said, 'The crowd doesn't want perfect. They want real. Be real, brother. That's enough.'" He paused. He believed in people even when they didn't believe in themselves. For Roman Reigns, the passing of Hogan sparked something deeper, something personal. In a sit-down interview with ESPN, Roman spoke candidly, not as the tribal chief, but as a father and a leader. "Hogan was a mirror," he said. "He showed us who we wanted to be, and sometimes who we needed to be. I watched him on tape growing up. But as I got older, I realized the man behind the sunglasses had endured so much: scandal, injury, fame, betrayal, and still kept going. That's strength. That's legacy." WWE announced that the upcoming Hall of Fame ceremony would be entirely dedicated to Hogan's memory. For the first time in WWE history, a posthumous figure would serve as the theme of the evening, every speech, every induction woven through the lens of Hulk Hogan's influence. On the night of the event, the arena was filled with an energy that felt both sacred and electric. Fans wore "Immortal Forever" shirts, and the stage was drenched in soft red and yellow lighting. A statue of Hogan, sculpted with his arms outstretched and one foot perched on the second rope, stood center stage. As the camera panned across the audience, you could see legends seated together: Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Undertaker, Kurt Angle, Lita, Trish Stratus, all unified by one man's enduring legacy. Brooke Hogan opened the ceremony with a spoken-word tribute, half speech, half poetry. Her voice trembled, but never faltered. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't always right. But he was always there. Loud, proud, and full of fight. He walked in boots too heavy for most, and carried a world that cheered and booed. But when the lights went down, he still loved, still gave, still stood. Her words melted into music as a violin rendition of "Real American" played in the background. For a moment, the audience closed their eyes, not to mourn, but to remember. One of the evening's most powerful moments came when Triple H took the stage for the final speech. He wore a simple black suit, no tie, and stood behind the podium with the air of a man who'd carried both the company and the weight of grief. "There is no WWE without Hulk Hogan," he said bluntly. "There's no WrestleMania, no Attitude Era, no international expansion without him. Period." The crowd erupted into applause, not because they were told to, but because they knew it was true. Triple H continued, "He taught us that being a superstar doesn't mean being perfect. It means showing up, giving your all, and giving people something to believe in, even when they stop believing in themselves." He was more than just a character. He was our cornerstone. As he stepped back from the podium, the crowd rose to its feet. A chant broke out, not orchestrated, not prompted, just born of love. "Thank you, Hogan. Thank you, Hogan." Backstage, Roman Reigns watched from the monitor. He was slated to close the show. But before walking out, he reached into his jacket and pulled out something deeply personal. The red and yellow wristbands Hogan had once handed him backstage during WrestleMania 31. "I want you to wear these when your time comes," Hogan had said. "Because that moment? That's when you become the guy." Roman slipped them on, walked through the curtain, and stood beneath the spotlight. "I never wore these before," he said, holding up the wristbands, "because I never felt ready. But tonight, I wear them to honor the man who made us believe in more than just wrestling. He made us believe in heroes." His voice cracked, and for the first time in his career, Roman Reigns, the powerhouse, the head of the table, let the tears fall freely. As the crowd looked on, a massive screen behind him displayed a singular image: Hogan, standing tall in front of an American flag, flexing toward the sky. Roman ended the night with a whisper, "Rest easy, brother. We'll carry it from here." The lights dimmed. The statue glowed. The crowd cheered, Not because it was a finale, but because it was a promise. A promise that no matter how many years passed, no matter how many new stars rose, the spirit of Hulk Hogan would live on. A month later, WWE unveiled plans for the Hulk Hogan Performance Center Annex, a state-of-the-art training facility in Tampa, designed to develop the next generation of superstars. Equipped with 3 rings, a media room, recovery zones, and classrooms for storytelling and promo work, the annex would not only build athletes, it would build characters. Dreamers. Heroes. The official ribbon-cutting ceremony featured Stephanie McMahon, Shane McMahon, Triple H, and Roman Reigns. But perhaps the most touching moment came when a group of young developmental wrestlers, none of whom had ever met Hogan, stood before the crowd and took a pledge to honor the ring, to honor the fans, to believe in ourselves, and to keep Hulkamania alive. As the crowd roared in approval, Roman turned to Triple H and whispered he'd be proud. Triple H smiled faintly, then nodded. He is. Elsewhere, fans continued to find new ways to honor Hogan. Online, a fan-led movement resulted in a Change.org petition to rename the WWE Championship belt the Hogan Immortal title in tribute to his legacy. The campaign garnered nearly 5 million signatures in under 2 weeks. While WWE didn't officially change the name, they announced that every championship belt going forward would include a small HH engraving inside the strap. A permanent mark of respect. One particularly emotional video showed a young boy visiting the Hogan mural in Tampa with his grandfather. The boy, dressed in a replica red tank top and fake mustache, stood silently before the wall. Then, in a soft, heartfelt voice, he whispered, "What you gonna do, Grandpa, when he's gone?" His grandfather, eyes watery, responded gently, "We remember him. That's what we do." And just like that, the myth of Hulk Hogan moved from generation to generation, not just through matches or promos, but through love, through memory, through moments. Because when you're larger than life, you don't just live, you echo, and Hulk Hogan? His echo will never fade. In the final chapter of this monumental farewell, the echoes of Hulk Hogan's legacy began transcending the boundaries of wrestling itself. No longer confined to squared circles or television screens, Hogan's spirit spilled into pop culture, community spaces, and even political arenas. Across America and around the globe, his name was no longer just synonymous with wrestling. It had become a symbol of perseverance, power, and positivity. In Hollywood, actors who grew up watching Hogan on TV paid homage in their own ways. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wore a red and yellow ribbon during a major film premiere, saying in an emotional red carpet interview, "Hogan showed us how to be larger than life, without forgetting where you came from. I wouldn't be here without him." That's not hype. That's fact. Celebrities from Mark Wahlberg to John Cena posted tribute videos, reflecting on how Hogan's personality shaped their confidence, their work ethic, even their sense of self. Back in Hogan's hometown of Augusta, Georgia, the mayor officially declared February 25th, Hogan's birthday, as Hulk Hogan Day. Schools gave students the opportunity to dress like their favorite superhero or wrestler, and in every gym across town, you could hear Real American blasting from the speakers as people worked out in honor of the man who encouraged millions to train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins. But perhaps the most emotional gesture came from the fans, the people Hogan fought for every night under those blinding arena lights. Thousands began organizing candlelight vigils in cities around the world. From New York to Tokyo, Toronto to Sao Paulo, strangers gathered in parks, outside arenas, and even in suburban backyards, wearing Hogan merchandise, sharing stories, and lighting candles in his memory. One vigil in New York's Central Park became a viral moment when a young girl, no older than 6, stood on a makeshift platform and belted out Hogan's theme song in full. She didn't know all the lyrics. She didn't need to. Her tiny voice rang out through the night air, raw and full of joy. And as the crowd joined in, a sea of "I am a real American" filled the park like a hymn. It wasn't about pitch. It was about pride. In that moment, it was clear Hogan's impact wasn't just in body slams or promos. It was in the belief he gave people that no matter who you were, what you faced, or how far you had to go, you could rise. You could conquer. You could live like a real American. WWE's tribute continued with an emotional segment during WrestleMania.